I'm Stacy Spriggs with IFAS Extension Sarasota County. I'm the Gardens Program Coordinator. Thank you for joining us today for our Power Tools Safety Training course. Just to give you a little bit of background about why we're here, a few years ago when my position was created, power tools were prohibited from being used in the community gardens. At that time, we did a tour of the gardens, talked with the garden managers, and learned a little bit more about what was actually happening with power tools in the gardens. What we found was that in reality, power tools are very much necessary for maintaining our gardens at a high standard. And we identified that there was a need for training for power tools to be able to authorize our garden members to be able to use them. We started asking questions about whether this made sense to do it the way that we had been doing it in the past. How is it handled elsewhere in the country? And what can we do to allow these power tools to be used? And with that, we updated our language back in 2013. Now it says, no power tools may be used without proper training and Sarasota County approval. By attending this class today, or by viewing the video, you will be considered an authorized power tool user. And of course, we recognize that most of you are lifelong gardeners in the program and have been using power tools for many, many years. The training is not intended to teach you how to use the equipment, but rather it is to address safe operation. And with that, Joe Kemp from Risk Management will be joining us to speak more in depth about this issue.
Thank you, Stacy. As Stacy said, my name is Joe Kemp. I'm a safety advisor at Sarasota County Safety and Risk Management Department, and today we want to discuss safe operation of power tools around your community gardens. Some of the tools that are most commonly used are sometimes lawnmowers, drills, trimmers. Some of you will be using chippers and also tillers, and some other tools that we will discuss moving forward. First thing we wanted to discuss was, prior to using the tools, what personal protective equipment you should be using in order for you to ensure safe operation. Some of the equipment that you'll be using include work boots. What we recommend is a steel toe work boot with slip-resistant tread and leather type boots as well, and they protect the best with any type of trimmer or chipper or any operation such as that. We also recommend steel toe shoes, or some of the newest boots that they have today have composite material in them that protect you just as well. Also want to recommend to you long pants to protect your legs. I know some of you out in the gardens, especially in the summertime, it's in Florida, it's hot, it's beautiful out, it's sunny, and you would like to wear shorts or something other than long pants. But in order to protect you while using power tools, long pants will provide the best protection for you. Also, shirts with long sleeves. Short sleeves are fine in Florida, but while you're operating power tools, we recommend long sleeves due to the fact that there could be some material that could affect your arms, and long sleeve will protect you the best. I also have some things I wanted to show you. And we have gloves that should be worn while operating tools as well. The best type of gloves for operating power tools are leather type gloves, and they also can help you while you're working in the garden as well if you're not operating tools. But these are the best protection for you. The latex gloves and any gloves that are of thin construction really will not benefit you when working with these power tools, because of the fact that they will rip easier and they won't protect your skin as much as the leather gloves. Also, please wear safety glasses. I have several varieties available. The first set I wanted to show you was a pair of safety goggles that actually, for people like me that wear glasses, they fit over your glasses and wrap around your eyes, which provides you 100% protection for any flying debris or anything like that. Also, we have more stylish versions that you probably see people wear all the time. And these are just basic goggles, or basic eyewear. One is clear, and the other is shaded to keep the sunlight out of your eyes. It's all for whatever you prefer, what you want to wear. If I was working in the summertime in Florida, I would probably choose the sunglass type, but most people like the clear ones as well. The one thing you want to, when you're purchasing these, the one thing you want to look for is that the glasses wrap around to cover your eyes all the way around. This way provides you 100% protection for any type of object that might want to enter your eyes as you're working in the garden. Hearing protection as well is very important. You will be working at sometimes with power tools that are very loud, and we must protect our hearing. If we do lose our hearing, we never get that back. So it's very important that we wear the proper ear protection. I do have several versions for you today. One are ear muffs, which provide you probably the best ear protection that you could have. The other are what we all know as earplugs. And you can purchase these either online or in your local store. A lot of stores carry these now, especially the home improvement stores. And for ultimate protection with hearing, you want to wear both of these at the same time. Now, sometimes that is not possible, so one or the other is better than nothing at all. The one thing I want you to look for when you're using ear protection or hearing protection is something that's called an NRR rating. That is the noise reduction rating. Each piece of ear protection will have that on their packaging material. The higher the number that you see is the higher protection you will get from hearing, which means that it will protect your ears and your hearing from loud noises. The average what you want to look for in hearing protection, and which is usually on the market today, will be somewhere between 25 and 30 NRR. So that is a good number. So if you can find that, that's great. And I would recommend that you do some research before purchasing them to make sure that you can maybe get to that number. There are lower numbers, they will protect you as well, but what you really need to look out for is the noise level of the equipment you're using, and make sure that the highest number you can purchase and you can wear is available to you. This way we'll keep the noise levels down. Sun protection. As we all know, we are living and working in the state of Florida, which most of the time, 11 and a half months out of the year, the sun is visible to us. So we must protect ourselves when we're out in the sun. When we talk about sun protection, this is a product that's made that we carry here for Sarasota County employees, and it is a sunscreen wipe, they call it. The actual sunscreen lotion is within the wipe. You open this up, and it's just like you're using a wipe on yourself to clean yourself, but you apply the sunscreen with it. This is an SPF 30. At the least, I would recommend an SPF 30 when you're working out in the sun. Also, if you were working out in the sun for a prolonged period of time, I would recommend following the manufacturer's instructions on when to apply. Sometimes we get into the habit of just applying this in the morning, and we work all day out in the sun and we never reapply. Please follow the directions on your sunscreen lotion. Some sunscreens are required to reapply every several hours, some maybe twice a day. Depending on the length of your time in the garden, you want to pay attention to that because these can wear off. And the sun in Florida can become deadly very quickly. So we want to make sure we protect ourselves with that. Also, one other thing that you might want to think about wearing out in the sun is a hat. You can wear any type of hat that you want as long as you protect your head from the sun. There are ball caps, there are hats, wide brim hats, which is recommended for full sun exposure. The wider the brim, the better. I have seen some of the gardeners out there wearing these types of hats, and it is very good to see that. It lets me know that you all are taking precautions to keep the sun out of your face and out of your head. So that's very important as well. Also, we wanted to discuss water. So one of the things as we're working in the sun in Florida and the humidity is hydration. Please, when you're working out in your garden, think of hydrating yourself and think of using water. You should be drinking water before you actually reach the site, and then drink water while you're there as well. Keep yourself hydrated. You can get dehydrated very quickly, and it can result in possibly a trip to the hospital, and I'll discuss that in a second. We have heat-related illnesses in Florida, and they happen every day in the state. And in order to prevent that, we have to keep ourselves hydrated. Now, I showed you some water. You could also use a sports drink such as Gatorade or something along those lines. The things you need to watch out with that is some of the contents that are involved with Gatorade, such as salt content and things like that. So some of you that are on need to be on a low salt diet or anything like that, you might want to look out for what the contents of the liquid is that you are drinking. So that's why we recommend water. It keeps you hydrated the best, and you should not have any issues with that at all. I would recommend bringing as much bottled water as you need to. If you're working there for an hour a day, bring several bottled waters with you. If you're going to be working in the garden for most of the day, I would recommend maybe bringing a cooler and load that up with ice, and make sure you keep some nice cold H2O available for you to drink. Some of the issues that we look at as far as heat illnesses are the fact that you could have heat stress or you could have heat exhaustion. And when you get to the most serious issues with that, there is a chance that you could be transported to the hospital. Some of the signs to look out for with any heat-related illness are confusion, if you stop sweating while you're working, if you notice someone acting strangely other than when they normally work in the garden, if you're friends with somebody and you know them acting differently than what they normally do. Some of these signs you might want to pay attention to, and if you start seeing these signs, then we want to remove that person from the garden, get them to a cool space as soon as possible. Whether that's inside an air conditioning room, or if you can get them to a shady area under a tree, and maybe a cold compress on top of their head. If it's to the point where they need medical attention, please do not hesitate to contact 911 and have emergency services come and at least take a look at the individual, and if they need treatment, then they can apply treatment at that time. So just to give you a little personal story about heat exhaustion and heat-related illnesses, yours truly was a supervisor for a utility crew back in the early 90s, a long time ago. And I was working out of an office, and this was also in the state of Florida. And it was on a Friday, and it was in August, and it was one of the years where Florida did not have a lot of rain that year. So it was very hot, very humid. So I was working for a shift where we only had probably 4 or 5 people. It was a Friday. So a coworker of mine, who was also a friend of mine, was a supervisor as well. And we had a very large sewer line break in the middle of an intersection. So I had been promoted to a new position with an office job, so I had been at that job for about 6 months. So I was in the air conditioner in a nice office, and I was away from the heat on a daily basis, which I had done for approximately 20 years prior. So when I was in my office, I get a call one morning that the sewer line broke. So I was drinking tea that morning, which is a caffeinated beverage. And I ran out of my office, jumped into my truck, and drove a couple miles to where the sewer line had broken. And as I was standing in the middle of an intersection, in one ear I had law enforcement, some FDOT people, and in the other ear I had some traffic control people and my people, and all were yelling at me at the same time about what we were going to do. So at that time, I would say the temperature was probably in the mid to upper 90s. With the heat index, it was well over 100. I want you to keep in mind that I was drinking tea prior to this, which is a caffeinated beverage, and I'll explain that in a second why that's so important. As I was standing there, this entire situation probably took no more than a minute and a half, 2 minutes. I felt symptoms of heat exhaustion. And I had issues happening to me, such as my toes and the fingers on both my hands were curling up. I lost all control of my muscles, and I stopped sweating. And within 20 seconds of all of that happening, I remember my friend asking me what we're going to do, and then he looked at me in the face and said, "Are you okay?" At that time I didn't know, but I turned completely white. And my eyes rolled back in my head, and I passed out right in the middle of an intersection. When I woke up, I was under a tree, and the paramedics were there treating me, and was not transported to the hospital, which was a good thing, but I was very close, according to the EMTs, to heat stroke, which could have been very, very big issue. Heat stroke at sometimes is almost fatal if you don't get treatment right away. So I was treated with a cold compress. I stayed under a tree, a shady area, for approximately 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and then I was released and went back to my office. The reason why I tell you this story is, and I emphasize the caffeine several times, is when you're out in the heat, when I told you earlier that you need to drink water, I also want to tell you to stay away from any caffeinated or alcoholic beverages while you're working out in the sun as well. They tend to increase your dehydration quicker than any other drink out there. So please be aware of your situation. No coffee, no tea, no sodas with caffeine, things along those lines. No alcoholic beverages while you're working out in the garden in this heat, because I will tell you from personal experience, it will affect you, and it happens very quickly. So, as stated earlier, if you see any of those signs from any of your coworkers or any of your co-gardeners or yourself, please act immediately to have them move to a cool area. And as stated earlier, if you need to dial 911, please have EMT on scene as soon as possible. Thank you. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about operating power tools. And prior to operating tools, there are some things that we need to look for. Number one is equipment inspection and maintenance. Always, before operating a tool, before you even think about turning it on or starting it, we want to inspect it. If it's a tool that has a spark plug, we want to disconnect the spark plug wire, and then we want to perform maintenance and inspection on that. Never perform maintenance on a running motor. Obviously, we know why that could be an issue. If we have a lawnmower we're using and we leave it running and we try to perform maintenance on it, we could have some very serious issues that need to be addressed. So make sure all equipment is turned off prior to performing any type of maintenance and inspection. Inspect all parts, such as the blades, and we'll discuss things like Chainsaws, you need to inspect the blades as well. Trimmers, you want to inspect everything, including the gas tank, all the way down to the trimming mechanism itself. Make sure all the parts are secure and everything is operating correctly. Ensure all guards are in place and working properly as well. One of the things we see a lot in our field is trimmers, and we see, I know you've seen them as well, we see people that remove guards on trimmers. Sometimes they get in the way, and when we're trimming around tight areas, it hinders our ability to trim where we need to. So sometimes those guards are taken off. Those guards are there for a reason, and they're there for your safety. So please ensure all the guards are in place. If you have a piece of equipment that the guard is not in place or it's missing, please report that immediately so we can get that addressed and repaired. If it is broken and it's missing, we can order a new piece and have it installed. Also, prior to operating the equipment, we want to make sure we inspect the area for obstructions, remove any debris that's in the way. The reason why we want to do that is for several reasons. Number one, we want to make sure no one is injured while operating equipment, to say if there's any loose leaves or branches lying around, and we accidentally move into an area where that's at, and that debris gets thrown around and it happens to injure someone within that area. We want to make sure all the debris, everything that's in the way, is moved out of the way prior to operating the equipment. Also, we do that because we want to make sure that we don't want to damage the equipment as well. So as we're operating the equipment, please inspect the area, move any debris, rocks, sticks, what have you, out of the way. If you do happen to damage any of the equipment, please make sure you report that as soon as possible. And what we want to do is take that equipment out of service until such time as it's repaired and made safe to use again. Also, when we're doing our inspection, make sure we check the fuel line for leaks and secure any connections that may be loose. I will give you a personal story that I know an individual that several years ago was operating a trimmer that had a loose fuel line, and when he filled the tank with gas, the fuel line was up near his, the fuel tank was actually up near his shoulder, and because of the loose fuel line, he was trimming for several minutes. The engine was hot, the fuel spilled on the engine, and he, from that point forward, a fire happened and he was burned over probably 60% of his body. So that's the issue that can happen when we have anything such as loose fuel lines and we don't address them immediately. So I want to make sure that everyone understands that this is very serious and your safety is number one with us. So make sure when you're inspecting these things, you take them very seriously. I would recommend maybe a checklist, either one written down on paper or a mental checklist. And if you contact or if you Google the manufacturer of your equipment, they should have an inspection checklist online that you should be able to use to look at everything you need to with your equipment. Also, when storing fuel, we want to make sure that you install it in proper container. For fuel, we want to ensure we install it in a proper UL listed fuel container. These containers nowadays, it's 2017, these containers are all, as we all know, red. So any type of red container that is supposed to hold fuel, we want to use that. We also want to make sure it's a safety container. There are containers on the market that aren't so safe. Make sure it is a safety container where the lid will be secured when you're finished using it. Any containers that you see that are being used for fuel purposes, make sure they are safe. If it is not a UL listed container, report that immediately so we can go ahead and address that problem. Also, never add fuel to a running or hot engine. As I explained earlier with the individual that was burned over 60% of his body, that is one of the reasons other than the leaking fuel line. But also, if it's just even if it's not a trimmer, if it's just a mower or some type of equipment like that, if you add fuel to that equipment and it spills on a hot engine, obviously we know what's going to happen. There will more than likely be a fire, and then we have another issue we have to deal with. So please make sure the engines are cool enough to add fuel if you need to do that. Along with adding fuel, never adding fuel to a running or hot engine, one of the things we wanted to discuss was using fire extinguishers. If you happen to run into an issue with a fire, hopefully it's a small one, what we want you to do is please make sure you know, first of all, where the location of the fire extinguisher is on site. Also, proper operation of the fire extinguisher, and just a brief little training scenario on that is, in order to operate the fire extinguisher correctly, there's a pin on top. You pull the pin, you point the nozzle to the base of the fire, and you sweep back and forth until the fire is under control and out. One of the things I want you to look for on the fire extinguisher prior to using it is make sure you check the gauge and make sure the needle is in the green area. That means it's serviced properly and charged properly and it's ready to use. If you happen to find a fire extinguisher that is not properly charged, that means we need to take that out of service and please have it replaced as soon as possible. Also, in case of injury, there should be a first aid kit at each location. If there is a first aid kit at your location, please know how to properly use the kit. These are for minor injuries. If you cut yourself or you have some other minor injury, that's what these kits are used for. Also, please inspect these kits as well. Make sure that all of the items that are in the kit should be there. There should be a list inside the kit of everything that's supposed to be in here. if you happen to use any bandages or any creams or anything for an injury, please make sure that they are replaced as soon as possible. There's nothing worse, there's no worse feeling in the world when you need to use a first aid kit and you go to take it off the wall or open it and use a bandage, and there are no items in there. It happens once in a while, and that will take all of you working together to make sure that this stays stocked properly. One other thing, in the state of Florida, as most of you already know, we have numerous pests. And what I mean by that are pests such as spiders, bees, wasps, and things along those lines. What I would recommend to you is anyone that is bitten by any of those or stung by any of those pests, please make sure you all carry your cell phones with you when you're at your garden. Today, everybody has a cell phone. In the case of any type of bite or sting, if you need medical attention or even an injury while operating a power tool, please make sure that if you need to dial 911, you have your phone or you have a gardener with you that has a phone close by where you can call emergency services. One other thing I wanted to discuss was in Florida in the summertime, we have what's called summertime thunderstorms. So one thing that I want you to be aware of is with our thunderstorms, we have lightning. So please be aware of that. It's mostly every day in the afternoon for those of you who are new to Florida. For those of you that have lived here for a while, you know what I'm talking about. So one of the things I wanted to tell you was if you hear thunder, you are close enough to the storm where you need to seek shelter. Whether it's in your vehicle, in a sturdy building, wherever you need to seek shelter. In the case of lightning, please stay away from any metal objects, and what I mean by that is any metal sheds or anything along those lines, because as you know, metal will attract lightning, and that is not a good thing. So make sure you get to a safe area. If you're at your garden, more than likely you drove there in your car, so your car is one of the safest places to be during a lightning storm. So, safe operating procedures. Some of the things that we need for you to look at are always use the right tool for the job. I know that seems like common sense, but there are times where you will see, or maybe it's quicker for you to use a tool that is not readily available, even if it's the wrong tool. So what I mean by that is if you need a trimmer to trim grass around your plot or around your garden, please use a trimmer and the correct trimmer. Please don't get a tiller and operate the tiller and drive it around the garden and weed with that. The same with any other tools as well. So make sure you use the proper tool for the proper function that you want to use. If you hit an object with equipment, immediately shut down the equipment. Shut the equipment down and fully inspect it. Make sure that the equipment is safe to operate. If it is not safe to operate after hitting a debris, then we need to keep it shut down, take it out of service, and report that immediately so we can get it repaired and make it safe to operate again, okay? So some of the things that you might run into are, we'll use the tiller again. If you're using a tiller and let's say you hit a tree stump that you didn't see and the tiller is affected in a way where it's not running as safe as it should be. So if you continue to use that tiller, we run into the issue of maybe injuring someone, including yourself, and also damaging the equipment. So as I said earlier, we want to make sure we shut that down and also report it immediately and take it out of service. Stay clear of moving parts. Please do not stick your hand or any body part in anything that is currently moving while operating. The example I give the best is a chainsaw. If you're operating a chainsaw, please don't stick your hand anywhere near the blade or the chain for obvious reasons. Trimmers the same way, any type of drills, the tiller especially, and the wood chipper as well. We do not want to maybe get anywhere near close to any of those items, especially the operating parts, due to the fact that it could cause some serious and severe injuries. Ensure no one nearby could be struck by debris as well. As we discussed earlier, if you are using powered operating equipment, we want to make sure the area is clean or clear. And what I mean by that is if you're using a trimmer, make sure people are out of the immediate area while using the trimmer. If you're using a piece of equipment that is going to create a wider area that needs to be cleared, make sure you do that as well. So just inform everyone prior to using the equipment that you will be using it and that you need to clear the area. Once you are finished with the equipment, go ahead and let them know, and then they can come back to their garden area. If you're running the equipment and you have to leave, please shut the equipment off. Never leave it running and unattended. We could have some serious issues with that as well. So anytime you leave an area that you're operating equipment, please shut it down, okay? Leave it there. If it has a key that operates it, remove the key, take that with you, and keep that until you come back and you can start the equipment again and then move it to a safe area. Now, I'm going to turn it back over to Stacy, and she is going to talk to you what to do in case of injuries and how to report things. I forgot my first name.
Thank you, Joe. All right, in case of an injury, I just want to remind everyone that at the time you join the program or during the annual renewal process, you signed a liability release statement. So everyone in the program is gardening at their own risk. If you're injured, please seek your own private medical attention. And of course, if there's an emergency, call 911. Anytime you see a hazard or a problem in the garden, please report that immediately to the garden manager. If they're not around, if you can't get a hold of them for some reason, then contact me. You can reach me through the contact center at 861-5000. If you're having trouble with equipment, whether it's a weed eater or other types of equipment that we have on site, usually those are county-owned equipment, and sometimes there are warranties in effect and whatnot. We don't want garden members working on that equipment personally. We want to take that into the repair shop and get those things taken care of through the proper channels. Now, garden managers and master gardeners, other external volunteers like church groups that might come in to help out at the gardens, or Keep Sarasota County Beautiful volunteers, those other groups are considered external volunteers. They are not authorized to be operating power equipment unless they have attended this class first. And we have different procedures in place for handling injuries in those cases. So for them, they should contact their volunteer coordinator so that staff can fill out the proper paperwork and get the process started. To receive proper credit for attending this training or viewing the video online, please either shoot me a quick email or leave a voice message for me so that I can be aware that you've completed this requirement. And we also have an Eventbrite link that you'll need to go in and get registered through. So make sure that I'm aware so we can give you credit in the system, and from there I can contact your garden manager back and let them know also that you're authorized to use the equipment. And again, members who have not completed the training should not be using power equipment in the garden. They should first watch this video and go through the same procedure that you have. And again, if you see any unsafe conditions in your garden, whether it's with equipment or tripping hazards, a piece of sharp metal sticking out from an object, anything like that, please let us know about it so that we can get it taken care of as quickly as possible so that we can prevent those injuries from occurring. And just wanted to point out a couple of resources to you. The Florida Vegetable Gardening Guide is our go-to handout for learning how to garden in our local area. So the link to that resource is on your screen. We have a couple of other resources for you. Always contact your garden managers or me anytime you have questions. And the Master Gardener Plant Clinic is available to you if you have questions about pests that you're seeing in the garden, how to grow, any kind of plant-related questions. You can feel free to contact them as well. They're a great resource for you, so feel free to use them. And with that, thank you for attending our Power Tools Training Safety class today. And feel free to contact me anytime with questions. You can reach me through the call center at 861-5000. Thank you.